Okay, Rabbi Isai, we have a lot of ground to cover, but we should get through it very quickly today. We'll be finished, Amir Hashem, certainly by 9:30. So let us go. We're on Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. Kotzrin mipnei hanetios mipnei beis ha'evel umipnei beis hamidrash. The very top of the Amud. The Mishnah had said that you're not allowed to harvest any grains before you harvest the barley for the korban ha'omer. However, there are certain exceptions. If you need to do a mitzvah that involves harvesting the grain, then it is permitted. So the three examples that the Mishnah had said is kosim mipnei hanetios, which Rashi, at least in one explanation, had said, let's say you need to pull out grain from the ground in order to avoid the problem of kilayim, okay? Or let's say you need to pull out grain from the ground because you need a space for people who are mourners to be able to gather, or for the Beis Medrash, you need a place for the yeshiva bachrim to sit down. So then you're allowed to pull out stalks from the ground for that purpose. So the Gemara says, "My timer, what's the reason that you are permitted to be lenient in these regards? Because kitzir rechem omer rachman v'lo kitzir mitzvah. Because the Torah says that the omer is the first of your harvest, which means that you can't have any of your harvest precede the omer harvest. But if it's not for your purpose, but it's for the purpose of a mitzvah, then it is okay." Next, v'lo ya'aseh krichos avol menichan tzavasim, that when you are harvesting things before the omer, you should not bundle them with rope or with string, but rather just leave them in loose bundles. My timer dekama de'ef shelo tarchin, and the reason is because you should avoid being matriach more than necessary, because really the focus is supposed to be on the korban ha'omer harvest. Mitzvahs ha'omer lahavi min hakama. The next thing that we learned is that the mitzvah is that when you harvest, you should harvest lishma. You should harvest for the sake of the omer, which means, therefore, that don't just choose barley for the korban ha'omer that was previously harvested, but rather start the process of the korban ha'omer from the harvesting stage, from the stage when it's growing from the ground. So Tanu Rabbanan v'im takriv minchas bikurim, ma talmud loymar. So the Brisa says as follows: there's a superfluous language in the pasuk which talks about the korban homer. It starts off by saying v'im takriv minchas bikurim laHashem, that when you're going to offer the korban ha'omer to Hashem, and it ends off with the words takriv es minchas bikurecha, you shall offer your first offering. So it's obviously superfluous. So why does it have to write it twice? Lefisha mitzvah ha'omer lahavi min hakama, minayin she'im lo matzah min hakama yavi min ha'omer. He says, because we know that the lechatchila mitzvah is to start the process of the mitzvah from the time of the harvest. But how do you know that if the 16th of Nisan comes and you discover that some guy, some yankel came along and cut down all of the barley, and you can't do the harvest anymore? All you have is harvested barley available. So talmud loymar takriv. So therefore the Torah says the word takriv a second time, that tells you unconditionally you still must bring the korban ha'omer, even if it can't be done in the optimal way, the lechatchila dika way, which is to start with the harvest. B'di'evet, if you can only take grain that was not harvested for the sake of the omer, you should still use it. Davar acher takriv lefisha mitzvah lahavi min halach minayin shim lo matz min halach yavi min hayavesh tamulomar takriv. Another explanation: takriv unconditionally, which means lechatchila you're supposed to use moist, fresh grain. What if the 16th of Nisan comes and all you can find is dried grain? Takriv teaches you unconditionally bring it, even if it's not in the lechatchila dika way. Davar acher takriv lefisha mitzvah seliksor balayla minayin shim niksor biyom kasher. V'doicha es haShabbos tamulomar takriv. So again, another explanation. We know that there's a mitzvah lechatchila to harvest the grain at night, and we also know that So how do you know that if it's done during the day it's kosher, and how do you know that it's even doicha Shabbos? That if the 16th of Nisan is on a Saturday, you still have a mitzvah of harvesting it. So tamulomar takriv. And so again, the Torah says takriv unconditionally, you must bring the korban ha'omer. And since an integral part of the mitzvah is the harvesting. Even the harvesting is doche Shabbos, not just the burning of the omer on the mizbeach. Takriv kol shehu, and so therefore the brisa concludes, takriv kol shehu, no matter what you shall be makriv, even if it's from already harvested bundles. Takriv mikol makom, that no matter where you find the grain, you have to be makriv it, even if the only barley you can find is outside Yerushalayim. Takriv va'afilu b'Shabbos, offer it even if the 16th is on Shabbos. And takriv va'afilu b'tumah, even if the community is in a state of tumah, there still is a mitzvah of being makriv the korban ha'omer. Now, I want to just point out that the topic of today's discussion is going to be about this aspect of the korban homer being doche Shabbos. We're going to see that that's not accepted by everyone, at least not the harvesting being doche Shabbos. If you learn that the harvesting is an integral part of the mitzvah, so then it's doche Shabbos. If you don't hold that it's an integral part of the mitzvah, then maybe it's not doche Shabbos, and that's what we have to really discover. But this is the brisa that starts the discussion, at least. Let's go on. Nixar b'yom kasher, the Mishnah had said that if it's harvested lichatchila, you should harvest it at night. But if you delayed and you didn't harvest it until the morning of the 16th, then b'di'evet it's kosher. So wait a minute. V'hatnan kol halayla kosher l'ketziras ha'omer ulahaktir chalavim ve'ivarim. 1 second. We have a Mishnah that says that the entire nighttime is kosher for harvesting the omer and for burning the limbs and fats of the korban tamid on the mizbeach. And zeh klal, davar shemitzvaso kol hayom kosher kol hayom, davar shemitzvaso balayla kosher kol halayla. And the brisa concludes with, or the Mishnah concludes with a general rule that when a mitzvah is a nighttime mitzvah, the entire night is okay for that. And whenever a mitzvah is a daytime mitzvah, the entire day is okay for that. So the Gemara infers from the language of the Mishnah, Ketani Laila Dumya Diyom, Ma Diyom B'Laila Lo, after Laila B'Yom Nami Lo. The implication of that language is that the Mishnah is comparing a nighttime mitzvah to a daytime mitzvah. Just like if you have a daytime mitzvah, like bringing a korban, if you try to do it at night, it's not kosher. So too, if you have an exclusively nighttime mitzvah and you try to do it during the day, it shouldn't be kosher. So the question is, why then did the Mishnah say that if the omer is harvested during the day, it's kosher? It's a nighttime mitzvah, so it shouldn't be kosher in the day. So Amar Rabba lo kasha, harebi v'hareb Elazar b'Reb Shimon. So the Gemara's answer is it's a machlokas tanoim. It's actually a machlokas between Rebbe and Rabbi Elazar b'Reb Shimon as to whether if b'di'evet it's harvested during the day, it's kosher. D'Tanya, haya omer u'makriv minchas ha'omer v'nitmeis im yesh acheres omer lo havei acheres tachteha v'im lav omer lo havei pikeach ushetok divrei Rebbe. Rebbe is of the opinion as follows. Let's say you have the barley that you harvested at night. You bring it to be makriv, and lo and behold, it becomes tameh. So Rebbe says, listen, if you can harvest more, quickly go and harvest more barley, and bring from the non-tameh barley. But if there's no other barley available, basically wise up and don't say anything. Wise up and be quiet. Why? Because b'di'evet, if the only barley that's available is tameh barley, you should bring it. But what do you see from here? That Rebbe clearly holds that if you harvest it during the day, that's okay, and that's better to harvest the barley during the day that from tohar stuff than to bring barley that's tameh that was harvested at night. But Rabbi Elazar b'Reb Shimon omer bein kach uvein kach omer lo hevi bikeach ushetok shekol homer shenikzor shelo kemitzvah so pasol. And Rabbi Elazar b'Reb Shimon argues, and he says no. He says even if there is other barley that is still harvestable, just be quiet. So wise up and don't say anything, because if the harvest was not done at the proper time, according to the mitzvah of doing it at night, it's no good. So clearly this is the machlokas tanoi, right? Now, Amar Rabba bar bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Rabbi Elazar b'Reb Shimon b'shitas Rabbi Akiva Rabo shel Aviv Amra. That Rabbi Elazar b'Reb Shimon, right, his father is Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon was a Talmud of whom? Of Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Elazar b'Reb Shimon is following the shita of Rabbi Akiva, his father's Rebbe. Ditnan klal omer Rabbi Akiva, kol melacha she'efshar lo la'asosa me'erev Shabbos eino doche es haShabbos. The famous statement of Rabbi Akiva by the laws of bris milah. if you know that you have a bris milah to do on Shabbos, Rabbi Akiva says you do the bris on Shabbos, but anything that could be done as a preparatory thing for the bris, let's say carrying the scalpel for the bris, you have to do that before Shabbos. You have to bring the scalpel to the place of the bris before Shabbos. And that does not override Shabbos. V'savar la Rabbi Yishmael da'amar kitziras ha'omer mitzvah. And he holds like Rabbi Yishmael, who says that the harvesting act is an integral part of the mitzvah. Ditnan Rabbi Yishmael omer macharish rishus af katzir rishus yatsa kitzir ha'omer shehi mitzvah. Now, Rabbi Yishmael says that the Torah forbids on Shabbos your plowing and your harvesting, but only, when it's yours, when it's something that's optional for you to do. But if it's a mitzvah for you to do that, the Torah wants you to do that harvesting, so then that is not forbidden on Shabbos. That overrides Shabbos. Now, so basically what we're saying is like this. Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon is of the opinion that when you have to do a mitzvah at its proper time, it's got to be done dafka at that time, even if it's Shabbos. V'isal gadaitach niktzar shelo kemitzvah so kasher amai dachi Shabbos niktzar me'erev Shabbos ela midachi Shabbos shmamina niktzar shelo kemitzvah so pasal. So you see, what's the inference that we're making? Reb Shimon says that if it's an integral part of the mitzvah, and the Torah says it's got to be done at that time, so then it overrides Shabbos. But if it doesn't have to be done, if it doesn't have to be done specifically that way, because it's not an integral part of the mitzvah, such that, let's say, if I didn't do it at nighttime, I have another option, I can do it during the day, because it's not such an integral part of the mitzvah, so then why would Ketziras HaOmer be Docha Shabbos? The fact that it's Docha Shabbos proves to me that it must be an integral part of the mitzvah. Otherwise, Reb Shimon would not allow you to do it on Shabbos. You would have to do it before Shabbos. But the fact that we know that Reb Shimon holds that he holds like Rabbi Yishmael, and he holds that that you're supposed to harvest the Omer even on Shabbos, proves that it's an integral part of the mitzvah. And that's why he says that if it's done the way that the Torah prescribes it, to do it at night, good. That means that you cannot do it during the day because it's an integral component of the mitzvah, such that if it's done in any malformed way, it's no good. So the Gemara now says, and this is all being derived from Rabbi Akiva. So frek the Gemara v'Revi lav talmidei de Reb Shimon. Who? So one second. What is Rebbe? Chop liver? In other words, he's also a student of Rabbi Shimon. Why does he hold that even though the Ketzira is an integral part of the mitzvah, that it could be done during the day if he didn't do it at night? V'hatanya, look, I'll show you that he's a Talmud of Reb Shimon. Amar Rebbe, kishahayinu lemedim Torah etzel Rabbi Shimon b'takoa, hayinu malin lo shemen va'aluntus mechatzer lagag u'migag lekarfeif u'mikarfeif lekarfeif acher ad sha'anu magin l'ma'ayan sha'anu rochetz in bo. That clearly this brisa describes Rebbe as a student of Rabbi Shimon, that we used to bring him oil and a towel to get to the wellspring on Shabbos. And apparently, the whole context of that has to do with the laws of Eruvin, where Rabbi Shimon paskind that all different types of private domains that are contiguous with each other are all considered to be one domain vis-a-vis the permissibility to carry from one to the other. But the point is that you see he's a student of Reb Shimon. So why does Rebbe feel that, why does Rebbe feel, presumably everyone holds that Ketziras HaOmer is Docha Shabbos, and yet at the same time Rebbe feels that if you didn't do it at night, you can do it during the day. That seems to be contradictory. If you hold that it's an integral part of the mitzvah, that's why it's Docha Shabbos, but that would also indicate that it has to be done specifically the way the Torah prescribes it, which is doing it at night. But if you hold that if it's b'di'evet, if you didn't do it at night, do it during the day, then it shouldn't be Docha Shabbos. You should have to do it before Shabbos if the 16th falls out on Shabbos. So the Gemara answers, Savar la ki'idach de Rebbe Shimon, de Tanyas. So the answer is that there's another statement of Reb Shimon that Rebbe will subscribe to, which is what? Amar Reb Shimon, bo or a kama chaviva mitzvah b'shaita. Rebbe Shimon says, look at how important it is to do a mitzvah in the proper time. Shaharei hektar chalavim ve'evarim kisherim kol halayla, v'lo hayo mamtin lahen ad shetechshach. That really, b'di'eved, if you don't, in other words, you have a right to place, let's say you have a korban tamid that's being brought on Shabbos. You have the right to offer that korban tamid the entire night after the day that you brought the korban tamid. So you could theoretically wait until Motzoi Shabbos to take those limbs and fats and burn them on the altar. And yet the Kohen didn't do that. The Kohen brought the korban tamid on Shabbos in the afternoon, and he immediately put the limbs and fats to burn, even though burning is a malacha. So you see that since it's a greater mitzvah to burn the limbs and fats immediately and not wait until night, then you should do that as well. And what do you see from here? That even if something is not an integral component, meaning that it can be done later if necessary, it could be done later. It could be done at night if you don't do it during the day, and yet Reb Shimon still holds it's Doicha Shabbos. So too over here. If it's not done at night, it's not done at night, you could do it during the day. So yes, it's an integral component of the mitzvah, but its timing is not integral, and yet it can still be Doicha Shabbos. And therefore it's not a contradiction. You can have something that is not necessarily bound to a certain time b'diavad, and yet it is still Doicha Shabbos because it's a chaviva mitzvah b'shaita. It's fantastic to do the mitzvah at the time, even if that time is Shabbos. So the Gemara now says, but wait a minute, Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon lo shami alei. So what? Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon didn't hear his father say that halacha by the evarim and chalavim, by the limbs and the fats of the korban. So why does he hold that the korban ha'omer is different? That the fact that it dafka has to be done at night is the only reason why it overrides Shabbos. Ela shayni hasam shehaydach soshchita es Shabbos. So the Gemara says, now you have to say that according to Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon, the reason why karbanos is different and it's doicha Shabbos, even though it could be done later at night after Shabbos is over, is because since you started, the Torah gave you permission to violate Shabbos to shech that karban, you can continue the Shabbos violation by burning the limbs and the fats, even though that could be done later. That's the reason. But if you have a mitzvah that the Torah did not give you permission to start off violating Shabbos because it's not integral that you do it on Shabbos, you would never have permission to do it on Shabbos if you could do it later. And therefore, according to Reb Shimon, it's not comparable. The korban ha'omer is a type of korban where the Torah doesn't give you permission to start off doing a non-integral aspect of the mitzvah on Shabbos. Therefore, you have to conclude that the ketzira has to be done dafka at night, and that's the reason why it's docha Shabbos. Ula Rebbe hachanami dachas ashchitas Shabbos. So the Gemara says, doesn't Rebbe agree to that distinction, that that's what makes karbanos unique? Because the Torah started off giving you permission to shecht it on Shabbos, and therefore you can continue violating Shabbos, which is not true by the korban ha'omer. Ela kesava Rebbe ketziras ha'omer lo dachia Shabbos. So the Gemara says you're right. The only way for this to make sense is you can't have both. You can't have that it's kosher to harvest it during the daytime, and yet it's going to override Shabbos. You either hold that it's so integral that it be done just so in its time, that it can only be done at night, and therefore it's docha Shabbos, or it can be done during the day because timing is not so important, but if so, then it's not going to be docha Shabbos. And therefore, we must conclude the fact that Rebbe holds that it could be harvested during the day shows that according to Rebbe, the korban ha'omer cannot be, the ketziras ha'omer rather, the harvesting of the omer is not docha Shabbos. If the 16th falls out on Nisan according to Rebbe, you must harvest the barley before Pesach. You can't harvest it on Shabbos of the 16th. So the Gemara now says, V'lo, oh really? V'hatnan v'chachamim omrim echad Shabbos ve'echad chol mishalosh hayaba. So the Gemara says, well, what about at the very beginning of our Mishnah when we talked about harvesting the korban, the omer on Shabbos? It says, regardless of whether it's Shabbos or regardless of whether it's a weekday, you have 3 measures of barley. So you see that the Mishnah says it could be done on Shabbos. Doesn't Rebbe subscribe to that? No, Deloka Rebbe. That Mishnah is not like Rebbe. What about the next part of the Mishnah? V'chachamim omrim echad Shabbos ve'echad chol b'shlosha b'shalosh kupos v'shalosh magalos. That regardless of whether it's during the week or on Shabbos, when you harvest the omer, you bring 3 boxes and you use 3 sickles. So doesn't Rebbe hold that like that? No, Deloka Rebbe. That Mishnah also is not like Rebbe because he holds you can never harvest it on Shabbos. Uve Shabbos yomer lehem Shabbos zu So the Gemara says, what about the next line in the Mishnah, which says that there was a public announcer. When it was time to harvest the barley, he would say a number of different things. Guys, you know what we're doing it for this Korban HaOmer, and if it was on Shabbos, he would also say, you know that it's Shabbos today, but we still have permission to do it. So that shows that you can do it on Shabbos. The Gemara says, Deloka Rebbe. That too is not like Rebbe. So Nixar biyom kasher v'doches HaShabbos. So wait a minute, let's look at our Mishnah. Our Mishnah had said that if the barley is harvested during the day, it's still kosher, and it overrides Shabbos. So you're telling me that those are two contradictory statements. If you hold that its timing is not vital, then it doesn't doicha Shabbos. So how can our Mishnah say that even if it's done during the day, it's okay, and yet it's still doicha Shabbos? So man shamas leidomer nixer b'yom kosher Rebbe kutani doicha Shabbos. So that goes like Rebbe, and you see that it's doicha Shabbos. So no, my lav kitzira lo lahakrava, but kitzira lo. So the Gemara says, no, you don't understand the Mishnah. When the Mishnah says that if it's harvested during the day, it's kosher, and it is docha Shabbos, it does not refer to kitzira, to harvesting the omer, it refers to the korban ha'omer. In other words, if the 16th is Shabbos, you must harvest it from before, but it's docha Shabbos, the hakrava, the offering of the korban ha'omer is docha Shabbos. So the Gemara says, but wait a minute. V'hatanya Rebbe Omer vayidaber Moshe es moadei Hashem. Look at the following brisa. This is authored by Rebbe. It says at the very end of all of the festival sacrifices in Parshas Emor, in Sefer Vayikra, it says that Moshe spoke all of the festivals of God before Bnei Yisrael. Ma tamu loymar. Why did the Torah need to have that round-up pasuk speak generically at the end of the parsha? Lefi shelo lamadnu elo l'tamaru Pesach. Shenemar bahen b'mo'ado b'mo'ado v'afilu b'Shabbos b'mo'ado v'afilu b'tuma. Because, says the Brisa, because really the word b'mo'ado is only written in the context of Pesach and Shabbos. Which teaches me that you do it at its time, which means even if the korban is being brought on Shabbos, it overrides Shabbos, and even if the korban is in a state of tumah, you still bring the korban. There's under certain conditions where, let's say, the entire kahal is tameh, you bring the korban pesach even in a state of tumah. So you know that the korban overrides Shabbos and it overrides tumah vis-a-vis those two halachos of Shabbos and Pesach. But sha'ar karbanos atzibur minayin. How do you know that other karbanos tzibur that must be brought, even if it's Shabbos, even if it's in a state of tumah? How do you know that it applies to other karbanos other than the karbanos of Shabbos and the korban Pesach? Tamulomar eile ta'asu ladoshem b'mo'adechem, because the Torah gives a roundup pasuk at the end that these shall you do to God on your festivals, unconditionally on your festivals, even if it's Shabbos. Minayin l'rabos omer v'hakariv imo shtei alechem v'hakariv imohen. Well, maybe that only refers to animal sacrifices. How do you know that even flour sacrifices that fall out on Shabbos override Shabbos? How do you know that the korban ha'omer and its sheep and the shtei halechem and its sheep override Shabbos? Talmud lomar vayidaber Moshe es moadei Hashem hakasuv kava moed lekulan. So the Torah therefore says that Moshe, that's what the roundup pasuk at the end of Parshas Emor is teaching me, that Moshe said that all of the moadim are the same. Just like the karbanos of Pesach and Shabbos override Shabbos, so too the karbanos of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Shavuos, the korban ha'omer, all of these other karbanos also override Shabbos. Now, that's the end of the brisa. So the Gemara says, Lamai. What is this brisa coming to address? Ilay malah hakrava, shtei halechem b'nei hakrava ninhu, elapshita litchina v'harkada, udekavasa gabe omer likitzira, v'kadachias ha-Shabbos. So the Gemara says, listen, the shtei halechem are never placed on the Mizbeach. They are waved proximal to the Mizbeach, but they are never burned on the Mizbeach. So what kind of doicha Shabbos do you have? You're not doing any malacha by waving the shtei halechem. So what malacha is the brisa referring to when it says that the shtei halechem is doicha Shabbos? It must be referring to the preparation of the shtei halechem, which is the sifting of the flour, the grinding of the flour, the sifting of the flour. And so too, when the Torah says that the omer is docha Shabbos, it must be referring to the preparation of the omer, not the burning of the omer. So therefore, and you see that according to Rebbe, even the preparation of the Omer, the harvesting, will be Doche Shabbos. Isn't that contradictory to what you just said? So the Gemara says, no. Lo, Omer lahakrava ushtei alechem la'afia uksava Rebbe tanur mekadesh v'i afila me esmol ifsalala belina. So the Gemara says, no, you misunderstood the Brisa. The Brisa is specifically referring to the aspect of fire. That even though fire is forbidden on Shabbos, if you have to bring the korban homer by burning it in fire, you're allowed to do that. And what's the component of fire having to do with the shtei halechem? The baking of the shtei halechem. Now, why does the baking of the shtei halechem, why is it doche Shabbos? Because it's an integral component of the mitzvah that cannot be done any other time except for that day. Why is that? Because if I try to bake the shtei halechem the day before Shavuos that falls out on Shabbos, guess what? It's going to become pasul belina, because the oven that you bake the shtei halechem in sanctifies the bread such that if it's left overnight, it's just like any other kachim, it becomes pasul. And therefore, since the only time that you can bake the shtei halechem is on Shavuos itself, if Shavuos falls out on Shabbos, you're allowed to bake the shtei halechem on Shabbos. So therefore, it's talking about the burning or the baking, and so therefore you're only allowed to burn the korban ha'omer on the 16th of Nisan that falls out on Shabbos, but it's not referring to harvesting. According to Rebbe, harvesting would be usher if it falls out on Shabbos. Now, v'sova Rebbe tanur mekadesh. So 1 second. You're making an assumption that according to Rebbe, the oven sanctifies the shtei halechem. But I'll show you that that's not true, because v'hatanya kivsei atzeres ein mekachim es halechem ela b'shchita. We saw a brisa previously, several weeks ago, that taught us that the shtei halechem are only sanctified with the slaughtering and the bringing of the sheep that is supposed to accompany the shtei halechem. Ketzat. So how does that work? Shachtan lishman bezark daman lishman kadash halechem. Shachtan shelo lishman bezark daman shelo lishman lo kadash halechem. That if you shecht and do the zrika of the sheep lishma, for the sake of the korban of Shavuos, so that at that moment the shtei halechem is sanctified. But if you didn't do it lishma, if you didn't do the shchita or the zrika lishma, the shtei halechem are not sanctified. Now, shachtan lishman v'zark daman shelo lishman halechem kadosh ve'eno kadosh divrei Rebbe. According to Rebbe, if you only did the shchita lishma, but you did the zrika shelo lishma, the bread is sanctified and not sanctified. And the Gemara had spent a lot of time explaining what does it mean, yes and no. It is sanctified and it's not sanctified, so we're not going to go into that now. But Rabbi Lazar, Reb Shimon Omer, la'olam eino kadosh ad sheyishchot lishman v'yizrok daman lishman. And Rabbi Lazar, Reb Shimon says, no, if you did the shchita lishma and the zrika shelo lishma, it's not sanctified at all. But what's the bottom line? Everyone agrees that the trigger to sanctify the shtei halechem is not the baking, but rather it's the avoda on the animal. So how can you tell me that you're allowed to bake the shtei halechem on Shavuos that falls out on Shabbos, because that's the only time, that's the moment of sanctification, when it's clear from this brisa that the moment of sanctification is after they're baked, when you do the avoda on the sheep. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, hukva'u v'lo hukva'u ka'amar. So Rav Nachman explains, let me explain to you what's going on, he says. He says, you're right, the shtei halechem are sanctified as kudshim once they're baked. So you can only bake it on Shavuos itself. So even if it falls out on Shabbos, it's doche Shabbos. What does the brisa mean when it says it becomes sanctified at the time of the shchita and the zrika of the sheep? That it's committed to be used as the shtei halechem for Shavuos. It's sanctified as sacrificial bread. But until you do the shchita of the sheep, if you wanted to use that bread for a korban toda, for example, you could. But it's still sanctified, such that if you baked it yesterday and you left it overnight, it would become pasul. But when does it become committed to be only used as a shtei halechem for Shavuos? Only at the time of the shchita and the zrika of the sheep. So therefore, the conclusion of the Gemara is that we have a basic machlokes as to whether the harvesting of the omer is doche Shabbos or not. According to Rabbi Lazar Reb Shimon, it is doche Shabbos. And therefore, it dafka has to be done according to its specific protocol of being harvested at night. And according to Rebbe, it's not doicha Shabbos, because since you have latitude as far as whether you need to do it at night, if b'diavad you could do it during the day, its timing is not integral, and therefore, it's not doicha Shabbos as well. Hadron alach Rebbe Yishmael. Now let's go on. Okay, ve'elu menachos nikmatzos v'shiarehen lakohanim. The Mishnah now tells us, switches gears completely, and it tells us the law of Kemitza. Now, okay, I want to make sure you guys are awake. It's been too quiet in this room. What does Kemitza mean? Kemitza, define it. Taking a fistful of flour. Okay, and where does that go, that Kemitza? It goes on the Mizbeach. What do you call the remnant of that? Shirayim. What happens to the Shirayim? It's eaten by the Kohanim. Exactly. Okay, you guys are on the board. So for the following menachos, that halacha applies. Minchas hasoles, v'hamachvas, v'hamarcheshes, v'hachalos, v'harikikin. The following are the flour offering, which is just made from flour. Machavas is a griddle, like a crispy, thin crust, baked, and you break it up into small pieces, and from that you do the kemitza. Marcheshes is a deep pan, Chicago style, where you make a deep pan baked, and then you break it up and you do kemitza from that. Chalos and rikikin are also two other different kinds of, one's a thick dough and one is from a batter. And minchas obdei kochava, minchas nashim, that a mincha that's brought by a Gentile, a mincha that's brought by a woman, uminchas ha'omer, uminchas chote, the minchas ha'omer, which is what we've been talking about up until now, that's made from barley. The minchas chote, if a Yisrael commits a sin and he for which the Torah allows him to bring a mincha to atone, this too is subject to kemitza, where the Kohen gets the shirayim, uminchas kenos. And finally, the 10th one on this list is minchas kenos, which is the sota offering, which is also made from barley. Rabbi Shimon Omer, minchas chote shel kohanim nikmetzes, the kometz karev la'atzma b'shem krevim la'atzma. So Rabbi Shimon argues. You see, the Tanakama holds that the only time that you need to do kemitza is when that kometz is going to be placed on the mizbeach and the kohanim are going to eat the leftovers. But by implication, if the entire mincha is going to be burnt on the mizbeach, there's no purpose in doing kemitza. Just put the whole thing on the mizbeach. Put all the flour on the mizbeach. But Reb Shimon argues. Reb Shimon says there's a type of mincha that is completely burnt on the mizbeach, which is what? The minchas chote of a kohen. When a kohen commits a sin, and the atonement is a mincha, he doesn't get the shirayim. We're not going to award him by letting him eat something from his korban. So he's got to burn the entire thing. But Reb Shimon says, guess what? That is still subject to kemitza. What do? You do kemitza, and then you take the two separate things. You take the small fistful, and you take all of the shirayim, and you put both of them on the mizbeach. According to the Tanakama, you don't need to do that. If you're going to burn all of it, what's the point of doing kemitza? But according to Reb Shimon, kemitza is an integral component of the mitzvah, not just to permit the kohen to have shirayim, but it's a stage of the mitzvah. Stage of the mitzvah, and therefore if you're going to burn all of it, do kemitza anyway. And then put both of them separately, the kometz and the shirayim, on the mizbeach.
Quick question.
Yeah.
The kohen who did the chait, he does his own korban for that, or he's representing somebody else's korban?
Well, it's, you know what, I'm not 100% sure, but it seems
So
like
wouldn't that matter?
he well, no, but it certainly he certainly has the right to burn it himself. Probably, if he's bringing his own korban, he probably, in other words, if he's got to bring his a korban for a chait, we would tell him to do it himself. It's a valid question. I don't know what would be the halacha. Presumably, the halacha would be the same, but it's predicated on the fact that since he can bring it himself, he shouldn't be awarded with the shirayim. The Gemara now says, Amar Rav Papa, Kol Hecha Ditnan Eser Tanan, that when we have when we talk about this Mishnah and we talk about numbers, the number 10 is associated with this Mishnah. And why? Because if you go through all of the different kinds of menachos that are subject to kemitza and shirayim, it's 10. So my kamashmala, what's your chiddush? Like, just count them. So the Gemara answers, La'afukim Reb Shimon da'omer mechza chalos u'mechza rikikin yavi kamashmala andalo. The chiddush is that we had learned previously on Daf Samech Gimel that according to Reb Shimon, there's an 11th type of mincha, which is a mix and match. We had looked at these menachos as being specifically isolated different kinds of menachos. There's a minchas machvas, there's a minchas marcheshes, there's a minchas chalos, there's a minchas rikikin. However, Reb Shimon says you can mix and match. If let's say I have to bring 10 measures or 10, or let's say I want to bring 10 different kinds of menachos, I can bring 5 chalos and 5 rikikin. So according to him, there would be an 11th item on this list, which would be the combo. And the word combo does not appear in our Mishnah, so it shows us that our Mishnah is not like Rebbe Shimon. Now, Vishiyarein lekohanim, the leftover goes to the Kohen in these 10 that are enumerated, Minolan. So the Gemara says, where do you know that the Shiraim go to a Kohen? So the Bach puts in the next word, Minolan? What kind of question are you asking? Where do you know this from? Dichsiva ksiva, udelo ksiva, ksivba bezos taras hamincha, hakrevos abnei Aaron v'gomer v'hanoseres mimeni yochlu Aaron uvanov. So, what do you mean? How do you know? There are types of menachos where the Torah writes explicitly that the Shiraim go to the Kohen, and even when it's not written explicitly by a specific kind of mincha, the Torah writes generically, this shall be the law of the mincha, Aharon shall bring it, and the remnant, the Shiraim, shall go to his children, his sons, the Kohanim. So it's clear, it's explicit in the Torah that the Shiraim are always eaten by the Kohanim. So the Gemara says, no, my question is like this. When we're talking about a wheat flour mincha, you're right, it's explicit in the Torah. And my question is, what if it's made out of barley, like a minchas ha'omer or a minchas kenos of a sota? That is not explicitly written. But ba'as nami, midik mikmetzes shiareha lekohanim. So the Gemara says, but wait a minute. The very fact that the Torah says to do kemitza for the korban ha'omer and the korban sota, what's the point of doing kemitza if the shiraim are not going to go to the kohanim? So isn't that obvious? If you're doing kemitza, then obviously the shiraim go to the kohanim. So the Gemara says, no. Aliba de rabbana lo kami bailan, ki kami bailan, liba de Reb Shimon, damar ika mincha de mikamtza velo misachla. You're right. According to the chachamim, you don't need a pasuk because the fact that you're doing kemitza shows that the shiraim go to the kohen. But according to Reb Shimon of our Mishnah, who said that even by a minchas chote of a kohen, you still have to do kemitza, even though it's all being burnt on the mizbeach, you have a question. Where do you get this idea that just because you're doing kemitza doesn't mean that the shiraim go to the kohen? So where is our source text that by barley offerings the shiraim go to the kohen? So ditnan Reb Shimon Omer minchas chote shel kohanim nikmetzes hakometz karv ba'atzman v'asharim karevim ba'atzman. So minolan. So that's our question. According to Reb Shimon, how do you know that barley offerings the shiraim go to the kohen? So Amar Chizkiya do Amar Kra v'chol mincha v'lulav ha'shemen v'chareva l'chol b'nei Aharon tihiyah. Because the Torah writes a superfluous pasuk. It says any mincha that is mixed with oil or any mincha that is dry and not mixed with oil shall go to all of the sons of Aharon. So that pasuk is superfluous, and therefore, even though it's normally referring to a wheat mincha, but since it's superfluous, you can apply it to a barley mincha, and that's how I know. Im eno inyan lebelula shel chitin tnei inyan lebelula shel saorim. Im eno inyan v'im eno inyan lechareva shel chitin tnei inyan lechareva shel saorim. So that's what the Gemara just says. Listen, I already know that a wheat flour mixture of flour and oil, the shiraim go to a kohen. I already know that a dry flour wheat offering goes to the shiraim, goes to the kohen. So if it's already written, so this pasuk can apply to barley. Barley mixed with oil or barley dry, the shiraim go to the kohanim. So wait a minute, says the Gemara. V'hai, I'm going to be finished by 9:30, you'll see. V'hai lahachi hu da'asa, hami boile lichedetanya. 1 second, you're using that pasuk to teach me that barley shiraim goes to the kohen? There's a brisa that says that we're using that pasuk for another purpose, which says as follows: Minayin she'ein cholkim menachos keneged zevachim. How do you know that if, let's say, you have a bunch of karbanos to bring on that day, and you have a bunch of kohanim, so the kohanim say, listen, we got animals, we got menachos, hey Bob, you like meat, you take the meat, and Jimmy, you're a vegetarian, you take the flour. So how do you know that you're not allowed to do that? You're not allowed to swap the meat for the menachos, and all the kohanim are supposed to take an equal share of everything. How do you know that? Talmud Omar v'chol hamincha asher teyafeh batanur l'chol b'nei Aaron tiya ish ka'achiv. So the Torah says anything that's a mincha that shall be baked in an oven shall go to all of b'nei Aaron. So those extra words, all of b'nei Aaron, means that they have to split it equally. They can't swap. Yachal lo yechalku menachos keneged zevachim shlo kamu tachtein bedalus. But maybe you'll say that you only can't swap animal meat for menachos because those are two very separate types of karbanos. such that even when you have a korban olav yored of fluctuating value, if a person can't afford meat, he's not allowed to bring flour, he has to bring a bird, right? So maybe you'll argue that's the reason why you can't swap meat for flour, because they're so disparate in their economic status. But perhaps what you could do is you could swap menachos for birds, because if a person has the economic right to bring a bird and he can't afford it, he's allowed to bring flour. So they're much closer in economic status. So maybe swapping birds for menachos you could do. So the Gemara answers, Talmud Omer b'chol na'asava marcheshes l'chol b'nei Aharon tiyah. We have another pasuk that says l'chol b'nei Aharon regarding the minchas marcheshes, the deep pan mincha. And those words are superfluous to tell me that you can't even swap birds for flour. Yachal lo yechalku menachos keneged ofos shehalol minei damim v'halol minei kamachim. But yechalku ofos keneged zevachim shehalol v'halol minei damim. Okay, maybe that you're not allowed to swap menachos for ofos for birds, because they're two different genres of kapara. One is kapara through blood, and one is kapara through flour. But maybe you could swap meat for birds. Like, he likes meat, I like chicken, right? So you take my beef, I'll take your chicken, right? Maybe you could do that, because they're both atonement through blood. So Talmud Omer va'al machavas l'chol b'nei Aharon tiyah. So now we have an extra l'chol b'nei Aharon written by the flat mincha. So those extra words teach me that even swapping meat for bird is not okay. Yachol lo yechalku ofos keneged zevachim shalol asiyasen biyad v'alol asiyasen b'chli. Avol yechalku menachos keneged menachos she'elu ve'elu asiyasen biyad. Okay, maybe you can't swap meat for bird because one is killed through a utensil, a knife, and the other one is killed through malika, through using the finger, right, the thumbnail. So maybe that's why they're disparate and they cannot be swapped. But maybe you could swap two different kinds of menachos. Let's say you like the deep dish Chicago style mincha, and I like the flat crispy kind of mincha. So you take all the deep dish and I'll take all of the machvas. Can you do that? So Talmud Omer v'chol mincha belulav Hashem and l'chol b'nei Aharon tihiyah. So we have another l'chol b'nei Aharon tihiyah, which is superfluous, and that's what that pasuk is telling me, that even mincha for mincha you cannot swap. Yachal lo yechalku machvas keneged marcheshes or marcheshes keneged machvas shezu ma'aseh hakash v'zu ma'aseh harakin. Avol yechalku machvas keneged machvas u'marcheshes keneged marcheshes. So okay, fine. Maybe you can't swap deep dish for crispy because they're two different kinds. But maybe you could swap marcheshes for marcheshes and machvas for machvas. In other words, maybe say, okay, Bob, you take all of the marcheshes menachos from that side, and I'll take all of the marcheshes menachos from this side. How do you know that that doesn't work? That you have to split each marcheshes mincha separately and each machvas mincha separately. So Talmud Omar v'chareva l'chol b'nei Aharon tihiyah. So again, l'chol b'nei Aharon tihiyah referring to the dry mincha. Again, superfluous words. Yachol lo yechalku b'kodshei kodshim v'lo yechalku b'kodshim kalim. How do you know that that swapping is not permitted not only for kodshei kodshim but even for kodshim kalim? Maybe kodshim kalim you could swap. So Talmud Omar ish ka'achiv v'im al toda. Kishem she'in cholkin b'kodshei kodshim kach in cholkin b'kodshim kalim. So therefore, the Torah puts the words, the end of that pasuk, ish ka'achiv, that every kohen has to distribute equally, right before the pasuk that talks about a korban toda, which is kodshim kalim. So it tells me that even for kodshim kalim, there has to be equal distribution and no swapping. So so the word ish teaches me that ish cholek vafilu balmum, ve'in katan cholek vafilu tam. And the Brisa concludes by saying that the word ish in that pasuk tells me that even if as long as you're an adult kohen, you get a portion, even if you have a mum. But if you're a child, even if you don't have a mum, you don't get, because you're not an ish yet. That's the end of the Brisa. What's the question? The question is, you're using the pasuk to tell you that swapping is forbidden. How can you use that same pasuk to tell you that the kohen gets the shirayim for barley offerings, according to Reb Shimon? So the Gemara answers, Hahu mikol nafka. The Gemara says, Reb Shimon uses it from the word kol. The word kol teaches you that the kohen gets the shirayim for barley offerings. All of the rest of the words of the pasuk are to tell you that swapping is prohibited, but the word kol is used specifically to teach you that the kohen gets the shirayim for barley offerings. V'ha afikte lechad Reb Yossi b'Reb Yehuda. But one second, Reb Yossi b'Reb Yehuda uses the word kol, for a separate halacha, that you're not allowed to mix and match menachos. Not like Reb Shimon, but he holds that the word kol teaches you that you're not allowed to mix and match menachos. You can't take, let's say, half chalos and half rikikin, half marcheshes and half machavas. So you're using the word kol for something else. So the Gemara answers, elahahu me vichol. But rather it's the extra letter vav on the word vichol, which teaches you that the Kohen doesn't just get the shiraim for wheat flour, but he gets the shiraim for barley flour as well. And this is where we'll hold it for today. Have a wonderful day. We have a minyan?